You are tuning into week 5 of Tracking the Pro Stock Market. I am Crumbz, and as always, we're going to break down the top teams, the bottom teams, each individual matchup, and at the end, I'll tell you where I think you ought to put your money. Now, last week was a super week, so there's a big shakeup. Every team played 3 games, and one of the biggest winners was Cloud9. They are now sitting at second place, just a few dollars under Team Liquid, who actually took a loss to Golden Guardians, who is not in the top 2, but surprisingly enough, they are also in $1,800 right now. Crazy to see, because it's also CLG that is in 1600s, but more on Golden Guardians and CLG later. The top 2 guys are Team Liquid and Cloud9, and right now I can confidently say that Cloud9 looks like the top dog for the regular season. Come playoffs, I think Team Liquid will always be a menace to deal with, because you have a lot of veteran players there who usually turn things up when playoffs come around. When it comes time to winning and not just playing regular season, those kinds of players usually shine. Cloud9 still a little bit green, but they have some really skilled players, and despite losing their head coach LS just last week, I think this team is set for higher highs. So watch out for Team Liquid and Cloud9 this week, although don't be surprised if they end up dropping a game here or there, particularly Team Liquid, as losing to Golden Guardians was a pretty bad one. But Cloud9 has a chip on their shoulder. They've got to prove that this was the decision that was best for every party in the long run, so I think this team now is full steam ahead. Now at the bottom of the barrel, who would have thought to see that in 9th place you've got the 100 Thieves, last splits champions, are right next to TSM, the embarrassment of the league right now. So 100 Thieves has a lot of work to do. They had a really bad showing on Super Week. Prep was off the charts, and not in the up, it was in the down. It was not a good week for these guys, and this week doesn't get that much easier for them, because you are facing off against Team Liquid in the first game of the week. That's not going to be one that Team Liquid will want to lose. And then you're up against CLG, who, yeah, CLG is CLG, right? That's always counter logic. But if 100 Thieves has that same bad week again, they could be even deeper in the hole. And then in last place, it's TSM. There's not much to ask for this team. You just want to see them get it together, and it seems like it continues to unravel and get worse. I don't think this is the time to invest in TSM, despite their stock price hitting an all-time low. It might be the lowest we've ever seen in stock price here thus far, so it's still gonna have to be TSM, probably taking a few L's before we invest in them, and by that time it'll be too late. So I'd say if you really want to be a zillionaire at some point, well, you're gonna have to invest in TSM, because the upside is really high, but I would not go for TSM anytime soon. I will be the one waiting to see how they do and then go for it, because for now, TSM, pure gambling. Now let's get into every single matchup, and we'll be starting with IMT against Evil Geniuses. Wow, EG finally kind of waking up, and so is IMT. This is a close one, but I'm actually liking the momentum that IMT has, because last week I did tell you that IMT wasn't looking very good, to stay away from it, but that was before it was announced that they replaced Wild Turtle with Arrow. News! And Arrow just turned the team on. Arrow has been playing really well for them. They've had a stronger bot lane. This has made their mid game a real threat, and it actually has allowed PoE to not have to be the sole carry of the team. Arrow has been doing really well, so I do think IMT have some improvements that they've made, and looks like they're continuing on that momentum. Xerxes is still respectable, and they have some good drafts, so I think IMT can actually take down Evil Geniuses, who's still continuing to waddle the way back to their lock-in form. Next, you've got TSM versus Flyquest. It's Flyquest all the way. I mean, unless Flyquest really mess up or TSM do some surprise benching in the middle of the season, it's looking like a Flyquest win, and TSM continuing to drop that stock price. I say wait until they're under 1K and then maybe start buying on TSM, because that's looking like the trajectory they're about to take. Then you've got Team Liquid against 100 Thieves. Team Liquid did lose to Golden Guardians, like I said earlier, but this is still a roster that is very formidable, and while 100 Thieves had an even worse week. So Team Liquid went 2-1. 100 Thieves lost, I think, 3 games. Maybe they went 1-2 or 0-3. It was hard to see. They all blurred into one blob of badness for me. So I still think Team Liquid Liquid is going to be winning this game, but don't be surprised if 100 Thieves turn it on, because it does mean a lot to them to prepare for the top teams and beat those guys, and not so much about the bottom teams. It ends up happening that all the top teams really just care about beating each other, and by doing so they put all their focus onto these top teams, and then they ignore and take for granted the bottom teams, and that's how they end up happening these big upsets, especially on a super week where you don't really have enough time to prep for every single team, as the developments that happen in the first day and the second are going to be the primary way to assess what's going to be played on the third. Next up, we've got Golden Guardians against Cloud9. Golden Guardians do look better, but Cloud9, I think it, like I said, is going to be the #1 team at the end of the season. So I think Cloud9 all the way here. This team looks on fire individually. Some of these players are just playing so well. Summit and Berserker have been so good, and Fudge can just play so many mid laners for the team that it makes any weakness that he had in the lane be entirely forgotten as it blends into the synergy of the team comp. Cloud9, I think, has found their stride, and they're going to find it again against Golden Guardians. Then you've got Dignitas against CLG, a battle for the ages. I remember being on Dignitas playing against CLG. You always want to beat them, but those times have changed. I think CLG can actually take down Dig here. Their stock price is a little bit higher, and Dignitas is still quite relevant, but CLG did get an inflated win against TSM, right? TSM just was so bad they lost against CLG here, and it wasn't even close. So I do think though that Dignitas is a better team right now than CLG, despite the stock price being a little bit lower, and that's why I'm gonna go with Dig taking down CLG. Now we move on to the Sunday games, where IMT face off against Team Liquid for the first match of the day, and don't be surprised if IMT end up taking this win. You play the safe bets because Team Liquid is still the favorite here, but IMT definitely has a chance. If I'd give you odds, this is like a 30-70, maybe 40-60 even for IMT's favor, and that's enough to happen on that day, especially if Team Liquid put all their prep against 100 Thieves. Remember what I said about beating those top teams, unless they don't consider 100 Thieves a top team anymore, as they're in the bottom with TSM. Don't be warned though, it could definitely happen. IMT's looking like they're on the up and up, especially with Arrow. Although Team Liquid did just get Core JJ's visa approved, the green card is here. I thought it was gonna be here last week, but they still chose to play Ayla. I think they're gonna be playing Core JJ a little bit more. If they continue to flaunt Ayla though, they're gonna have a really strong support duo that they can just mix and match. It's not like their champion pools are too different, but the value that you get is that by flexing Ayla, you get to sell this player for some big bucks by the end of the season, as he played and shared so much time with one of the greatest supports that we've ever had, Core JJ. Next up, CLG against 100 Thieves. The embarrassment for 100 Thieves could continue with a loss here, and so could the upward streak for Counter Logic. I do think 100 Thieves has this in the bag because CLG really struggles to close games, but if 100 Thieves has some whoopsies where Abidaga is just dying on Corki for no reason, 1v1 by himself, nothing to pressure him, then we're gonna have some real troubles for 100 Thieves. So watch out for this one. I'm still gonna be thinking that 100 Thieves is stronger, but I would stay away from these two teams. The risk is too high. This is a flip-flop, and you never knew that that would be the case when 100 Thieves, the last season's winner, was gonna be facing off against CLG. In the middle of the pack, we've got EG against Cloud9. This ought to be a banger. This ought to be a very explosive one on paper, because we've seen a lot out of EG that is exciting. We've seen Jojo Pion be a thrill to watch. Danny has been making some good moves, but the reality is that I think Cloud9 is just too rock solid right now for EG to take them down. I fully expect EG to be able to compete with them early on in the game, but as soon as they start to fall behind, they're gonna slip, and it'll never be the same again. So I think that Cloud9 is gonna take down EG, which puts them at the worst an 0-2 week, at the best a 1-1. So EG is gonna be a tough choice for me this week for the stock market. Next up, we've got Flyquest against Dig, and this is where I think Flyquest makes their case for being our 2-0 team of the week. They are the third lowest stock price. They're facing off against Dig, who's right up next to them, just $3 more expensive, and they have a pretty easy strength of schedule. You've got TSM and you've got Dignitas. This team started off in the top of the standings for the first 3-4 weeks, so this team has some potential. They know know what it's like to taste that glory, and I think they want their way back. And starting with a win against TSM should give you the momentum to take down Dignitas afterwards. I think Flyquest takes down Dig here, and they go 2-0 on the week. And the last game of the day, TSM versus Golden Guardians. It's Golden Guardians all the way. TSM still hasn't shown us anything to really be excited about. We don't even know their players well enough to know what possible strength they have. It's not like IMT when they were the worst team in the league and had a PoE, because at least then you knew, hey, you got PoE, you've got control mages, you've got something you can work around. Right now, what do you have on TSM that you can say, yeah, you can fall back on those plans? There isn't anything like that on the team, and that means that without a foundation that you can at least play on the strengths of your players, there isn't much consistency in your game plan. So TSM still floundering around, still figuring out how to rebuild their roster. And to be honest, I fully expected this. If you think about TSM's trajectory as an organization, they've never had to rebuild. They had Bjergsen, and everything was always built around him before. An exodus of players and staff happens, and now this is actually the first time that TSM has to start from scratch and go about building a roster. I almost see this like a new organization entering the split and trying to make their mark, make their stand, and they say, we're gonna go with development, we're gonna try something new, and so far it has failed. We can give them some more time, but don't be too harsh on TSM right now, because this is actually the first time this team has had to do it. And the irony is that they've always mocked teams like Golden Guardians, Immortals, and Dignitas and CLG for their fumbles when they came to rebuilding a team, and then when it was time for them to do it, they also struggled. So it clearly shows that TSM maybe took advantage of the position that they were to punch down on the other organizations, and now perhaps will be a little bit more humbled when looking at the teams and rosters that the other teams have put together. So to sum it all up, I think the dark horse for this week is going to be Flyquest. They are the third lowest, they have the consistent record and a very easy strength of schedule. If you feel like playing it safe, it's going to have to be Cloud9 this week. Golden Guardians is facing off against Cloud9, so despite some strong momentum, I don't think they'll take them down, so that takes them out of the picture. Team Liquid is going to be facing off against an IMT on the rise and 100 Thieves that could just be upset and gunning for them specifically, so you discard those guys. IMT is possible if you believe that they're going to be able to beat EG and TL, but that seems too unlikely. I think Flyquest plays it safe, they're cheap, and they've got the chance to absolutely at least get you a 1 win for this weekend, as TSM is definitely not going to take them down. That's going to be it for week 5 of tracking the pro stock market. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next week.